Hello everyone, my name is Jimmy. Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode of Rippin' the Fence, we're going to be talking about everything we saw from Indianapolis. But before we hop into the video, I just want to quickly remind you guys, hit that like button and subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it if you guys did that. But let's go ahead and hop into the video, waste no time. Matthew, my friend and co-host, is joining me as always. And we got a lot to talk about. It was the return of the Oval, the Brickyard 400, after a couple years on the road course. But quickly, Matthew, how are you doing beforehand? Get things started.
Well, I'm doing good after another amazing race weekend. Of course, the Xfinity race, absolute cinema there. We both watched it together. That was awesome. And then F1 this morning. The rookie, not the Piastri again, his first win. That's what I meant. But it was in the lamest way possible. Yeah. IndyCar, I didn't watch that, but I saw there was a spectacular crash during that. That was interesting. And then, of course, we had the Brickyard 400 today, which, boy, we have a lot to discuss about that. So let's get right into it.
Before we talk about the Cup race, I do want to quickly talk about F1 for 1 second. I want to go on a quick rant because Oscar Piastri, like McLaren, literally told Lando Norris to pull over and let Piastri get the lead and take the win. Like, that's not real racing. Like, I'm gonna channel my inner Dale Tanhart here and not go off on a rant like that, but like that is not real racing. Like, how does a team, you're just like, oh, just pull over and let your teammate win? Like, come on. Like, in NASCAR, teammates, they race each other hard, they wreck each other. Not that Netflix F1 racing. Like, come on now. Golly day. Um, but I'm happy for Piastri, but like even in his interview, apparently he was just like, oh yeah, I won, yay. Like, he didn't earn it. Come on, like, yeah, earn the race win. You can't just let your teammate win. But anyways, now we got that um, not real racing out of the way. Time to talk about real racing right here. NASCAR Oval, Indianapolis, the return to the Oval, the crown jewel back on the schedule. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Um, Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin, they started on the front row. Toyotas looked strong as always. Stage one was pretty calm, except there was an issue. Chase Elliott and Brad Keselowski, they both got penalties for blending on the track improperly, and this is where I want to have Matthew's opinion on it as well. Um, so the rules are like extremely vague. So I have two different screenshots here. One of them says, use the warm up lane until the exit of turn two. That's all that says. And then the next one says, vehicles must use the acceleration lane through the exit of turn two. Check your mirrors and come up to the racetrack. You may swing wide beyond the white line on the acceleration lane between turns 1 and 2. Stay off the racing surface. So that I somewhat get, the racing surface. But, like, in between turns 1 and 2, the drivers, they're not using the bottom lane. They're up against the wall the entire time. So I can see where NASCAR would want to lay down the hammer on the penalty here, but they haven't called it in years past, and they're just like, oh yeah, let's call it today. And I'll give them credit, at least they were consistent with it today. They called Chase Elliott and Brad Keselowski for that penalty, but I don't know. NASCAR needs to be more simple or more straightforward. They just gotta be like, all four tires cannot cross this white line or something like that. Like, come on, NASCAR. Be more simple. Be specific. Don't play this game of gray area when it comes to penalties like this. In hindsight, it didn't matter because Chase Elliott and Brad Keselowski, they both made their way back up to the front due to track position. But if this happened on the final green flag stop of the race, it would have been a much bigger issue. Um, but yeah, Matthew, I want to get your quick thoughts on that before we then hop on to something else. So what do you think about that whole penalty situation? Do you think NASCAR should be more clear about that line and that rule? What do you think?
I don't know why we're. I don't know why this is even considered a controversy. I mean, it's pretty simple. They crossed over the white line that goes to the racing surface. I mean, they literally every driver got that same rule book right there about it, and clearly only two drivers out of like what 39 drivers that were entered, and all the different pit stops we had all day long only happened twice. So I don't know why that's considered controversial. Where nobody else, I mean, everybody else followed the rule exactly, but only two times it didn't. The driver crossed over that white line, and guess what? Deserved penalty. I mean, that's in the rule book, plain and simple. I mean, I understand there might be a little bit of confusion, but there's if you look on the track, there's two solid white lines. There's one that outlines the access road, basically, and then there's the solid white line that outlines the racing surface. And what they meant was the white line that outlines the racing surface, not the. So basically, you can create an arc over it. It just have to be in between those two lines, basically, not go outside that secondary line. So I don't know why that's considered controversial. I mean, I think it's plain and simple, but you know, I'm not going to get into it. But yeah,
All right, so that was basically the main event, the main highlight, I guess you could call it, in stage one. Varying strategies, they were already starting in stage two. The oval at Indy has always been known for fuel strategy, track position, that kind of stuff. Um, there was a crash in stage two as well, off of turn number two. Ryan Preece, he tried to split William Byron and Harrison Burton, and they made contact and came together like that. And William Byron spun across the track, collected AJ Allmendinger, and had a pretty big hit to the inside wall. I will say that Indianapolis Motor Speedway, they do need to put a safer barrier around the entire track as soon as possible, because most of the outside wall down the backstretch is not safer barrier, and William Byron did hit that before coming back across the track. Thankfully, he was okay, and it wasn't too big of a hit, it looked like, on the outside wall, but Indianapolis, they definitely need to invest in some safer barrier around the whole racetrack, especially if you have Indy cars going around there at 240 miles an hour. Like, I don't know how this hasn't been a thing for several years before, but hopefully they do look into that in the near future. It was funny because William Byron, he actually blamed Chase Briscoe for the wreck, because Briscoe kind of pinned Byron and cut him off coming off of turn two, and then that made Byron check up, and then it kind of stacked everybody up. So I kind of found that interesting that Byron ended up blaming Briscoe for it and not Preece, since Ryan Preece was the one that made it three wide through the middle there. At the end of stage two, there was some more strategy. Denny Hamlin led several drivers to decide to stay out, including Ryan Blaney and Brad Keselowski. And Tyler Reddick, he led drivers down pit road, including Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and a few others. Martin Truex Jr., he did not have a good day at all. There was a caution for him in stage three. Him and Kyle Larson made contact going into turn three. It's interesting because Truex thought that Ross Chastain and him made contact, I guess, and then he cut a tire going into turn three, but it actually looked like Kyle Larson got loose or tight underneath of him and barely touched Truex and sent him into the outside wall over there, so a little bit confusing about that. But Truex, he would be able to continue in the race, but later on he would cause another caution. I think he had a tire go down this time in turn three, same spot, backed into the wall. That one ended his day. Even more carnage and controversy in stage three. There was another caution on the restart. Carson Hocevar made it three wide, and him and Ryan Blaney made contact, and this ended up catching Jimmy Johnson and Joey Logano. I see a lot of people blaming Carson Hocevar for this incident, but I'm actually going to defend him here because he made it three wide way before they even entered turn one, and it kind of looks like Ryan Blaney comes down on Carson Hocevar in this incident and kind of wrecks himself, and then Joey Logano and Jimmy Johnson get involved in that. So, yes, Carson Hocevar made it three wide, but it looked like he was clearly there. So I'm going to defend Carson Hocevar on this one. I know he's gotten a bad rap over the past few weeks. And then after that, where am I? Here we go. Where am I? I lost my spot. Okay, yeah. Larson, Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, and others, they pit under green before that other Martin Truex Jr. caution, so they would be good on fuel to the end of the race. Everybody else was very close on fuel. They would restart outside the top 20 after the Martin Truex Jr. incident. So Brad Keselowski and Daniel Hemrick, it looked like they were like beyond short on fuel. So they had to pit one more time for sure. And then Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Zane Smith, and several other drivers, they were going to be close on fuel. They would have to save quite a few laps to make it to the end on fuel. So that final, well, not final green flag run, but the final long green flag run, Kyle Larson ends up beating Tyler Reddick through the field. He gets inside the top three with 10 laps to go, and Brad Keselowski is the leader, who still hasn't pitted for fuel somehow, some way. Ryan Blaney's in second, who is very close to making it on fuel, and then Kyle Larson is third, who is good to go on fuel. And let me just say, Kyle Larson, he probably made it through the field so quick because there were drivers saving fuel, which probably made it a little bit easier for him to pass them. Tyler Reddick, he was able to get through the field a little bit as well. But those were the really only two that could get through the field. But yeah, Keselowski, Blaney, and Keselowski, Blaney, and Larson are running 1, 2, 3, and a caution comes out with 3 laps to go for Kyle Busch. And this was going to be a remarkable finish under green flag conditions because we had Brad Keselowski on fumes running around the racetrack, wondering if he was going to run out of fuel. We had Ryan Blaney, who looked like he saved enough, but he was also trying to defend Kyle Larson, who was pushing the pace and trying to force them out of gas. But unfortunately, did not get to see that happen. There was that caution for Kyle Busch with 3 laps to go. And then this is kind of where things get interesting. So, nobody pits. Keselowski stays out. And then, as they're coming to the green, so for the choose, Keselowski takes the inside. Blaney takes the outside, assuming Keselowski's going to run out of fuel at some point. And then Larson picks behind Keselowski. And then they come to the green flag, the pace car comes off, and then all of a sudden we see Brad Keselowski dip off behind the pace car. And then that allows Kyle Larson to jump up to the front row, but Ryan Blaney, he's still the control car. So Ryan Blaney launches, him and Larson go almost identical. Kyle Larson nearly jumped that restart, but I think Ryan Blaney accelerated just a tiny bit before Larson did. But Larson gets a better restart. He gets ahead of Ryan Blaney before another caution comes out on that restart. So that happens. There's a wreck. John Nemechek, Daniel Hemrick, Denny Hamlin got involved in that one, unfortunately. So for the second overtime restart, Kyle Larson, he chooses the bottom, Ryan Blaney chooses the top, and Kyle Larson jumps out ahead of Ryan Blaney. And Larson gets into the lead. Tyler Reddick follows him to second place. And off of turn 2, Ryan Preece, he spins, hits the inside wall. His car stopped for a few minutes. Well, not a few minutes, for a little bit. And then he tries to get his car going, and then it stops again. Kyle Larson takes the white flag, and then NASCAR decides to throw the caution right as Kyle Larson is coming through turn 2. So that would end the race. Kyle Larson would win it. So let me quickly go over the results, and then we'll talk a little bit about those final 2 overtime restarts. So Kyle Larson ends up getting the win, like I mentioned. I want to focus more on the back half of this top 10 because there are a lot of good finishers, including Bubba Wallace in 5th, Todd Gill in 6th, Austin Cindric 7th, Daniel Suarez 8th, Noah Gragson 9th. So a lot of good runs for those drivers inside the top 10 there. But let's quickly talk about what happened over those final 2 overtime restarts. The first one, Ryan Blaney was upset, rightfully so, I suppose, with Brad Keselowski running out of fuel as they're coming to take the green flag. He's saying that they should have waved the restart off and then have to do the choose all over again, and that's not how it goes, unfortunately, Ryan Blaney. The rule is if there's some kind of issue on the restart or the start, that lane just moves up, and then whoever is next in line, like first or second, they get to take control of the restart. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess I know why Ryan Blaney's throwing a fit is because he got screwed over in that situation, but just wrong place, wrong time for him. And that's just the rule. That's how it is. And if they would have waved that restart off, that would have taken a whole nother lap. And we know how long caution laps are at Indianapolis. And everybody was low on fuel, and we could have had more drivers run out of fuel, and it could have just stretched the restart on forever and ever and ever before they ever got going. And then that final restart, the main controversy there is over the caution call for Ryan Preece. So I looked at the replay of the restart again. It looks like NASCAR had about half a lap to determine whether to throw the caution or not before the leaders got to the white flag. And it looks like when Ryan Preece initially spins and hits the wall, he's paused for just a few seconds and then he starts to roll again. And then he comes pretty much to a complete stop once again after that. Um, and NASCAR officiating and officials, like, they're going to have these inconsistent caution calls. And should they have thrown the caution before the white flag? They probably should have, but we also have seen NASCAR in the past few weeks try to let the race play out under green as quick as possible, like as smooth as possible. They want to race the finish naturally, and we saw it in Chicago a few weeks ago at the road course. They waited forever to throw cautions if there were cars stalled on the track. I know Denny Hamlin, he spun out in turn 6 at Chicago, and he was sitting still for, it seemed like, 5 minutes before he finally got the car fired and going once again. So, should NASCAR have thrown the caution? Yeah, they probably could have before the white flag came out, but at the same time, I don't blame them not for doing that either, because we did just have one overtime restart. This is the second overtime. We have drivers, really close on fuel, and it could be Nashville 2.0. We could have 5, 6, 7 overtimes. So, I understand both arguments for it. And yes, we have Mr. Hendrick Hater over here, probably like, oh no, they didn't throw the caution. But it's okay, because it probably could have happened either way. It's a toss up, in my opinion. So, Matthew, let me get your thoughts on those two overtime restarts before we go ahead and finish the video out talking about Kyle Larson, the winner, and all that kind of stuff. So let's hear it.
So on the first overtime restart where Keselowski all of a sudden goes to pit road, and I think actually Jimmy, I think when the leader goes pulls on the pit road the last second, I think technically Blaney is the control car. I think,
Yeah,
and
that's what I was saying, but I'd say may have said it a little bit weird, but yeah, the whoever's the next in position like gets to control the restart. So Blaney was in control of that restart.
yeah, so Blaney was in control of that restart. And if you look at the replay, it looked like Larson, while I don't think it's really egregious as, like Hamlin and Richmond earlier this year, you can tell that Larson looked like it would be a tough call, but he kind of jumped that restart a little bit. I mean, just my just my opinion for what I see on the replay here. It looked like he kind of jumped the restart there a little bit, so that's definitely controversial, and I understand why Blaney's frustrated about that. Um, Now we get to the second overtime, and this is, oh, I was so frustrated about this. So, Jimmy, you should know, and we've seen so many wrecks in NASCAR over the years. You should know where Ryan Preece was hitting that inside wall. He's not going anywhere. Like, come on. He is not going anywhere. You know it, and I know it. But the damage on that car, and the fact that all four of his tires are flat spotted, he's basically beached, basically. You know, and I know that should have been a caution. You know, and I know he was not going anywhere. So it's very frustrating because like they literally had plenty of time to throw the caution. It wasn't like, oh, he's Larson's about to take the white here when that happened. No, they were still in the backstretch straight away. They had plenty of time and they chose not to do it. And the primary reason why is they didn't want another Nashville situation. Which, look, I understand, but come on, if we gotta play by the rules right here. If a car is basically beached, it's not going anywhere. That should be a caution right away. So I I just this is unbelievable. Yeah, it's just a fitting way to end the Brickyard 400 in controversial fashion. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, it was frustrating that the race couldn't finish under green, and I was actually surprised as well that they didn't throw a caution. I sent Matthew a message like right away, and I was like, "Dang, I'm kind of surprised NASCAR didn't throw the caution there." I think the only thing that kept them from throwing it is that like once Priest has stopped, he did get going and move a little bit, and then he came to a stop again. So I'm sure NASCAR they were probably like, "Oh well, he did get going and then he stopped. Can he get going again?" Not necessarily defending them here because he was sitting in the middle of not in the middle of the racetrack, but he was sitting in the racing surface on the bottom lane for quite a while before Kyle Larson did get to the start finish line for that white flag.
Well, the thing is, like, I don't think it should be a guessing game if he's moving or not. I think it should be common sense. I mean, NASCAR's seen plenty of these crashes with the next gen cars the past 3 years, basically. They should know that if they're hitting the wall like that and all four tires are basically flat, they're not going anywhere. So they need to use more common sense than, oh, we're guessing that he's going to get back going. I don't think it should be like that.
I do have a good solution for this. So I think if they're in like an overtime situation and there's any kind of incident where the car is stopped, that it should be a caution. I wouldn't say immediately, but pretty close after the incident occurs, that a caution should come out. Now, if they take the white flag, it's a different story. I'm not saying they shouldn't have thrown a caution in this situation because Priest was in the middle of the racetrack, but like let's say like a super speedway, if it's the final lap and there's a crash in turn one on the white flag lap, then yeah, they can probably let it go green unless the accident is severe and they need to get people to the scene right away. But like within that first lap of the overtime, I think there should be a caution pretty much no matter what. But if they take the white flag, that's where it could be a little bit more in that gray area and kind of determine case by case basis if they should throw the caution and end the race or not. But just a small suggestion that they could do. Not like they'll listen to me, but that's just my 2 cents on that situation. And then back to the first one with Larson. I think that was a very tough situation for NASCAR too because you have Kyle Larson. He has to catch up to Ryan Blaney first, and I'm not sure the distance between when he catches up to Blaney and where the restart zone starts, but like Kyle Larson, he had to accelerate to catch Ryan Blaney to get even with him, and then they get to the restart zone. So I can see why that was a little bit tough to call as well, since Larson had to accelerate first to even get even with Ryan Blaney there. But Kyle Larson did end up winning the race, his fourth win of the season, and this is his third crown jewel. He has won the Brickyard 400 now. He won the Coca-Cola 600 in 2021, and he won the Southern 500 last year. So now he only needs the Daytona 500, very similar to Kyle Busch, which I don't want to say the Daytona 500 is the more lucky one to win, but it kind of is since it's a super speedway track. But Kyle Larson has three of these crown jewels out of the way. And seems like he's going to be around the sport for quite a long time. It'll be interesting to see if he ends up completing the Grand Slam, quote unquote. Him and Kyle Busch kind of both fighting for that Daytona 500 to cap it all off and finish it off. And I also want to talk about quickly in this video, they returned to the oval for the Brickyard 400. And I'll kind of talk about this in my rating for the race as well. But you got to think as of the Brickyard, you got to treat it like a crown jewel, like the Daytona 500, the Southern 500, the Coke 600. You have to treat it like that, even though the racing isn't the best. And I know Matthew, he's a big fan of the road course, which I understand because that is, that's more carnage and more entertaining, and the racing is better, and I understand that, but I'm almost going to compare the Brickyard 400 to Monaco in F1, where Monaco is like this prestigious race in F1, but the racing absolutely sucks. Like, if you start on the pole, you're probably going to win at Monaco, but look at all the attraction that race gets. I'm not saying the Brickyard 400 gets that, and I think Indianapolis and the track and NASCAR, they need to do a better job of promoting the Brickyard 400 to make it feel prestigious, kind of like they did for this race, bringing it back, and they need to do a better job of it moving forward so that the oval does not lose that reputation that it did back in 2019, 2020, when they were just like, okay, we're tired of this, the fans aren't showing up. So I think NASCAR and the track, they need to do a better job making this race what it is and promoting it for what it is, a crown jewel race, an important race. Drivers dream their whole life of racing in Indianapolis on the oval to win the Brickyard 400. So I think they should stay on the oval, even though the racing isn't the best, but it needs to be treated like a crown jewel. So that's just my quick thought on that. But Matthew, any thoughts about Kyle Larson getting one step closer to finishing that Grand Slam and Indianapolis in general as a racetrack moving forward?
Well, first and foremost, congrats to Kyle Larson. He had one of the best cars today. He definitely had the best car at the end of this race for sure. I mean, he was moving up through the field like nobody else could today. Today, basically. I mean, like I said, he's the best driver in the Cup Series, the best driver in Hendrick, and he continues to prove that every single time. I mean, this guy's a generational talent. I mean, nothing, nothing else much to say. It's Kyle Larson. He's him. So congrats to him. Um, of course, the Brickyard 400 itself. I mean, it sounds like a decent. It sounds like there's a decent crowd there today. So I'm glad people did show up for this. But I mean, they gotta figure out a way to get this racing product fixed here because it was not really good to be honest. The Xfinity race yesterday, they ran I guess, restrictor plates basically, and that race was awesome. I mean, that was awesome racing. And I mean, if trying to figure out what to do with the Cup cars there next year, maybe they need to try something similar with that. I mean, I don't think it would hurt anything. Just see if it makes better passing or pretty much the same. I don't see why not. Let's try it. But yeah, it's Indianapolis has never really been one of my favorite tracks in terms of racing product because it's one lane, and if you go to the top, you're pretty much going to the back, like Martinsville, basically. But I mean, I get it. I mean, Indianapolis is a special place and all, but don't come in there expecting to see a fantastic show, unless it was the Xfinity race yesterday. But yeah, don't expect anything spectacular at the Brickyard races. I mean, yeah.
All right, and we do have to talk about the regular season and playoff standings as well because those did change today. Kyle Larson, he is now the regular season points leader over Chase Elliott by 10 points. And then Tyler Reddick is 15 points back, and Hamlin is 43 points back. And then the playoff cut line, Martin Truex Jr. and Ty Gibbs and Ross Chastain, they all had bad days today. So Truex's lead is down to 108. Gibbs is all the way down to 42 points above the cut line. Busher plus 17, Ross Chastain minus 7, or sorry, Chastain plus 7, who had a bad day, and Bubba Wallace minus 7, who got a top 5 out of the day. So in just a matter of like 2 weeks, Bubba Wallace has cut this lead down from 40 something points down to single digits. So as Matthew said in our video a few weeks ago, Bubba Wallace right back in it. Only 7 points out. We got a few good tracks for him coming up, so he could most definitely point his way in. And even Ty Gibbs isn't really safe right now, plus 42 above the cut line. If he has one more issue, he could be right on the cut line down there with Busher and Chastain as well. So these last few races, they're going to be intense. There's 4 to go until the playoffs now after the 2-week break. So we're going to hop straight into our rating of the race and our paint schemes as well. And as Matthew alluded to, the racing not the best on this Indy oval. I think I just gotta go 5 out of 10. Just simple, right in the middle, 5 out of 10 for me. And then my paint scheme of the race is going to be Noah Gregson's Bass Pro Shops car. And I mainly like this car just because it looks exactly like his Xfinity Series car that he drove for Junior Motorsports. It's good for, fans who may have followed him in the Xfinity Series or may have watched Xfinity and then they see that car on the track. And they're like, oh, I recognize that paint scheme. That's Noah Gregson's car. So I like how they pretty much put copy and paste from Xfinity to Cup for this Bass Pro Shops car. So that's my paint scheme and my rating. Matthew, what are you going to rate the race, and what was your favorite paint scheme?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to give this one a 4 out of 10. I'm sorry. I did not enjoy this race. Not only because the racing was boring. It was semi watchable because of the strategy, but of course I got thrown out the window at the end of the race, and then he had all the controversies at the end that absolutely just flushed this race down the toilet. So I gotta give it a 4 out of 10 to be honest. As for my paint scheme in the race, I gotta go with Bubba Wallace's Air Force paint scheme. Of course, I'm a big aviation person, especially when it comes to military aircraft and, of course, United States Air Force. I mean, self-explanatory. So, yeah, I loved it. I love this paint scheme.
All right. So, like I said, there are 4 races until the playoffs. After our 2 week Olympic break, we got Richmond, we got Michigan, Daytona, and Darlington. We might throw a video in there in between, just depends on kind of the news that comes out and our availability and stuff like that. But before we finish this video out real quick, Matthew, do you have any other closing thoughts for us?
No, this video is getting kind of long, so I don't want to bore our viewers anymore.
Alright, well, thank you guys for sticking around. If you made it this far in the video, thank you guys for watching. We greatly appreciate it. Leave your thoughts and comments about everything you saw from Indy down in the comment section below. Make sure to check out my social media pages. They'll be linked in the description down below. But until the next time, we will see you guys in our next video.